What if I told you there's a house that doesn't just stand silent in the dark? It waits. And when the clock hits midnight, that's when it shows its true face. They say every town has a place people avoid, a place so heavy with stories that even passing by it makes your skin crawl. For this town, that place is a crumbling old house at the edge of the woods. In daylight, it looks abandoned, just another broken-down building that time forgot. But when midnight comes, that's when everything changes. Locals whisper that the house doesn't just stand there, it waits, as if it's holding its breath for someone to walk too close or to step inside. Some claim they've seen shadows moving in the windows when the clock strikes 12. Others say they've heard whispers echoing through the halls, even though no one lives there. And a few, those who dared to enter, were never quite the same again. Over the years, this house has built a reputation that even the bravest don't dare to test. Parents warn their kids never to wander near it, and even grown adults cross the street just to avoid walking past its gates. The strange thing is, no one can tell you exactly when the stories began. It's almost as if the house has always been there, surrounded by whispers. Some say it was once home to a wealthy family who disappeared without a trace. Others insist it was the site of secret rituals, the kind that leave a place forever marked. But no matter which version you hear, one detail is always the same. The house doesn't rest at night. It waits for the clock to strike midnight, and that's when things start to happen. Neighbors have claimed to see faint lights flickering inside, like candles moving from room to room, even though the electricity was cut decades ago. Some say they've heard the sound of footsteps pacing across the wooden floors, or laughter echoing faintly through the walls. And every so often, someone swears they've seen a figure standing in the upstairs window, watching, waiting, vanishing the second you dare to look again. This reputation has given the house a kind of twisted fame. Teenagers dare each other to step inside after dark, though few actually go through with it. And those who do, they rarely stay long. Almost everyone who's gone in comes out pale, shaken, and refusing to talk about what they experienced. It's as if the house doesn't just scare you, it keeps a part of you behind. The earliest story people tell about this house dates back more than 50 years. It was the late 1960s, and a group of young men, locals full of bravado, decided they'd prove once and for all that the house was nothing more than an old, empty building. At first, it was just supposed to be a dare. Go inside after midnight, look around, and walk back out. Simple. They chose the night carefully. No moon, no wind, the whole town fast asleep. Just before midnight, they slipped through the broken gate and pushed open the creaking front door. The air inside was thick and musty, like the house hadn't been opened in decades. They made their way through the halls, whispering, joking nervously, trying to act braver than they felt. And then, right as the old grandfather clock in the hall struck 12, the mood shifted. The temperature dropped so suddenly they could see their own breath. The laughter stopped. One of them swore he heard a woman's voice whisper his name, clear as day, though none of his friends had spoken. Another said he saw a shadow glide across the ceiling, even though there was no light in the house to cast it. Panic set in, and they rushed for the door. But here's the part of the story that everyone remembers. Not all of them made it out at the same time. One of the young men was missing. The others claimed they searched the rooms, calling his name, but he was nowhere to be found. Then, almost 5 minutes later, he stumbled out of the front door, pale and shaking, unable to speak. When he finally calmed down enough to talk, all he could say was that the house wouldn't let him leave, that something inside had been holding him back. From that night on, the house's reputation was sealed. It wasn't just an old building anymore. It was a place that had witnessed something something that wanted to keep anyone who dared to enter. What makes this house so different from any other so-called haunted place is the timing. People don't just say it's haunted. They say it only wakes up when the clock strikes midnight. That's when the real fear begins. Over the years, countless stories have repeated the same strange details. At midnight, people claim the walls begin to breathe. You can hear the old wood creak and groan, as if the house is stretching awake after a long sleep. Windows that looked dull and lifeless suddenly show faint flickers of light, as though someone is carrying a candle from room to room. And then, there are the sounds. Footsteps pacing across the upstairs hallway, doors shutting by themselves, whispers so faint you almost convince yourself you imagine them, until you realize they're whispering your name. Some witnesses even swear they've heard the sound of a clock ticking inside, though there hasn't been a working clock in the building for decades. But the most terrifying stories are about the figures. Dark shapes moving behind the curtains, shadows that don't match the moonlight, and sometimes a pale face at the window. People say if you stare too long, the face doesn't just look back, it smiles. And if you're still standing there when the last bell of midnight rings, you might even see the front door slowly swing open, like the house itself is inviting you inside. Those who've experienced this phenomenon say it's not just something you see or hear, it's something you feel. Your chest grows heavy, your skin prickles, and an overwhelming sense washes over you. The house isn't empty. It's waiting for you, and every second after midnight, it wants you closer. The first group of boys wasn't the last. Over the decades, more and more people have tried to test the legend for themselves. Some were thrill seekers, chasing the rush. Others were skeptics, determined to prove it was all just old-town superstition. But nearly every account ends the same way, with terror. One of the most chilling stories came from a mailman who had delivered letters to the houses nearby for over 20 years. He swore that on several nights, just as he was finishing his route, he would hear a woman humming from inside the house. It wasn't faint or distant. It was as if she was standing right behind the front door. When he mentioned it to the neighbors, they just told him to stop walking that way after dark. Then there was a group of teenagers in the 1980s who made the mistake of sneaking inside on Halloween night. They carried flashlights and laughed at first, but by midnight, things turned serious. One of them claimed to have felt a hand grip his shoulder, cold, firm, and unshakable. When he turned around, no one was there. Another said his flashlight went out completely, and in the beamless dark, he saw glowing eyes watching him from the staircase. They ran out screaming, but the strangest part was that every single flashlight they had brought inside stopped working permanently. Even police officers have their stories. In the early 2000s, after complaints from locals, 2 officers were sent to check the property for squatters. They entered just after midnight. Both men later admitted they felt something was wrong the second they crossed the threshold. Their radios crackled with static, their flashlights flickered, and one of them said he saw a shadow dart across the hall, even though there was no one else inside. They didn't stay long, and in their official report, they wrote only 2 words, no activity. But off the record, they told friends they would never go back. These accounts, spread by word of mouth, passed down through families and whispered in bars, have turned the house into something far more than wood and stone. It's no longer just a place, it's a warning. A place where time seems to bend, where objects stop working, and where people swear they've been touched, followed, or even spoken to by something that shouldn't exist. And yet, despite all of this, curiosity never dies. There are always new faces, new daredevils, ready to test whether the legends are true. and almost every one of them comes back with the same look in their eyes, the kind that says they saw something they can't explain and wish they hadn't. Whenever a place like this builds such a terrifying reputation, people naturally start asking, why? Why does this house seem alive at midnight? Why do so many different people describe the same eerie events? Over the years, dozens of theories have surfaced, some logical, some terrifying, and some that sound almost impossible. The paranormal believers are convinced the house is cursed. They argue that the family who once lived there practiced dark rituals, rituals meant to trap spirits, or worse, call something into our world that was never supposed to leave. According to them, the midnight phenomenon is no accident. Midnight has always been considered the thin hour, the time when the veil between our world and whatever lies beyond it is weakest. In their view, the house doesn't just wait. It feeds on anyone foolish enough to step inside at the wrong time. Others believe the house is a prison of sorts, not for the living, but for the dead. Some say the souls of those who entered and never returned were trapped inside, doomed to wander its rooms forever. That would explain the whispers, the flickering lights, and the shadows that don't quite make sense. If the house is holding on to them, then every midnight is just another cycle of restless spirits trying to reach the outside world. Of course, skeptics have their own explanations. Some point to natural gas leaks that might cause hallucinations or confusion, though none have ever been recorded in the area. Others say it's the power of suggestion. When people are told a place is haunted, their mind fills in the blanks. A creak becomes a footstep, a shadow becomes a figure, and before you know it, the legend feeds itself. But there's one theory that unsettles even the skeptics. Some researchers in paranormal circles suggest the house isn't haunted at all, it's alive. They believe certain structures, under rare circumstances, can hold onto energy, absorbing it like a sponge. And when enough energy has built up, it behaves almost like a living creature, watching, waiting, and interacting with those who dare to get too close. If that's true, then the house isn't just the site of strange events. The house itself is the phenomenon. And yet, no one has been able to prove any of these theories. Every explanation leaves behind more questions than answers, which is why, to this day, the house remains one of the most chilling mysteries people can't stop whispering about. Today, the house still stands, weathered, broken, and half swallowed by vines and weeds. Its paint has peeled away, its roof is sagging, and most of its windows are nothing more than cracked glass or empty frames. From a distance, it looks like any other abandoned building, but locals will tell you it hasn't lost its presence. No one lives there, of course, and the property has changed hands several times over the years. Strangely, every new owner seems to leave it untouched, as if they buy it only to walk away. Real estate signs go up, but the house never truly sells. Still, people continue to visit. Urban explorers sneak in with cameras, chasing proof of the midnight stories. Paranormal groups set up equipment, hoping to capture voices or shadows. And curious teenagers dare each other to spend just a few minutes inside after dark. Even now, the house waits at the edge of town. It hasn't collapsed. It hasn't burned down. It simply endures, silent in the daylight, restless after midnight, like a secret that refuses to be forgotten. No matter how many stories are told, no matter how many theories are argued, one thing remains the same. The house has never given up its secrets. Every encounter, every chilling detail adds to the legend, but never explains it. Some people say that's the most terrifying part. Ghosts can be understood, curses can be broken, but a house that simply waits? That's something different. It suggests patience, intention, almost like it has a mind of its own. Why midnight? Why only then? And what exactly is it waiting for? The unanswered questions keep the fear alive. Maybe it's all just a carefully built-up legend, fueled by whispers and imagination. So, what do you think? Is the house truly haunted, cursed, or even alive? Or is it nothing more than a story that's been told so many times, people have started to see what they expect? The truth may never be known. But one thing is certain. When the clock strikes midnight, the house doesn't feel empty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.